Alright guys, I just got back from the range and wanted to give you a quick report on some 6.5 Carcano ammunition that I was shooting out of a Vetterli 1870/87/15, specifically Milsurp Munitions' newly produced 6.5 Carcano safe loads for the Vetterli. Now, as a disclaimer, this is a subject that is beaten over the head so frequently that I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I'll give a quick recap. The Vetterli 15 is an emergency conversion rifle, and during the First World War, about 400,000 were converted from 10.4 Vetterli cartridge to shoot the 6.5 Carcano smokeless cartridge. The idea was to free up Carcano rifles used by second-line units and give them converted Vetterlis, and you have the added benefit of just using one ammunition supply chain instead of producing two different types of rifle ammunition. Now, the locking action on the Vetterlis were pretty strong for 1870 and just tolerable enough to withstand the pressure from a modern 6.5 Carcano load, so instead of replacing the entire barrel, they adopted the Salerno method, a fairly complex process where they inserted a stepped steel line inside the barrel and drilled out the necessary rifling to chamber and shoot a 6.5 Carcano cartridge. Modify the bolt, add a Mannlicher magazine, and now you have a rifle ready to go fight the Austro-Hungarians. So many will advise you not to shoot commercial 6.5 Carcano ammunition in these because the pressure tolerances from 10.4 to a 6.5 Carcano smokeless cartridge was marginal. Now you guys can watch and probably have watched CN Arsenal's video on this where they had a few rifles fail from a crack in the lug collar, gas escaping into the bolt body through the firing pin causing the bolt to pop up, and a case head separation where escape gas damaged the stock and magazine. I mention this because it created an identity around these rifles as wall hangers that are never meant to be shot. These are most certainly old rifles. In my case, my rifle was manufactured in 1876, so without a doubt, an old piece of machinery. Now, with all the RTI Vetterlis that have been recently imported, there is demand to shoot these, and without disregarding Othias's experience, there is a responsible way to approach shooting them without risking your health and safety. This was a stopgap measure in the First World War. They're old and some are in questionable condition. But to my knowledge, there are no documented cases of these being damaged from ammunition-related issues in the First World War. They would not have issued them to soldiers if they had suspected such problems. Now, going back to the disclaimer, you as an owner need to take responsibility for checking your rifle, checking out the headspace, and fully cleaning out any rust. Check the bolt, locking lugs, your chamber, and all the critical components you would on any rifle. I do know plenty of people that hand load and regularly shoot these rifles with fine results, so I wasn't really that concerned, but it will get brought up, no doubt. So Milsurp Munitions has manufactured a downloaded cartridge specific to the Vetterli 15s, and Steinells has actually just recently come out with their own line of 6.5 Vetterli safe ammunition. I'll have to do a video on theirs in the near future, as I wasn't aware of this until just a few weeks ago, and of course, everything is on back order. Now, the Milsurp Munitions box calls it 6.5 Vetterli, which is a nice touch and has all the usual warnings. He uses a 264 139 grain Spitzer bullet with a 2,000 feet per second estimate. He also mentions that his loads are reduced to 75% of what he puts in his 6.5 Carcano load, so it's downgraded by 25% from the original cartridge, so we should get lighter readings. So with that being said, I was using a Caldwell G2 chronograph. The weather was evenly overcast, no rain, at about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Wind was negligible, but picked up from time to time. Now for this test, I was shooting at 100 yards using a Royal Tiger Imports Vetterli. I was having some feeding issues with the end block clip, so I ended up using a 3D printed single shot adapter. You don't need to do this for the Vetterli, but it made loading single cartridges much easier. I was checking that each round was read by the chronograph to know that I had exited the rifle safely, as I was worried about squibs. I also checked the receiver after each shot for any damage, and nothing came up. Furthermore, I checked each case to make sure there were no cracks or separations, and nothing came up on that end either. Now, what I did notice is that the primers did pop out a little bit after each shot, which actually is an indication of under pressure. This is a problem because the case is not pushing back against the bolt face to reset the primer. I did relay this to the owner of Milsurp Munitions as something that I noticed. I did expect it to feel lighter than normal 6.5 loads since they were downcharged. You could definitely feel it for sure. The rifle absorbed most of the shock. I didn't see any jumping bolts, and when I went back to watch the footage afterwards, I didn't see any escaped gas, which is a good indication. The final results, after 12 shots, I ended up with an average velocity of 1,765 feet per second, a standard deviation of 39, and an extreme spread of 118, so fairly stable. The velocity was not quite as high as the advertised 2,000 feet per second, but I know enough about ballistics to know if this is in squib territory, but that's why I checked after each round. Now, for aiming, this rifle has a minimum range of 275 meters, and this is an RTI example, so needless to say, the grouping wasn't something I was focused on for this. We got 7 on paper out of 12 with no discernible grouping. Obviously, the original 6.5 cartridge was loaded with a 2.67 diameter bullet, so this may be one of the main reasons we weren't seeing tighter shots. And it could also be my unfamiliarity with aiming these rifles. Now, the Vetterli 6.5 safe ammunition that Milsurp Munitions makes is $50 a box, which is a little steep, but totally understandable with a small one-man operation dealing with a niche cartridge. Economies of scale and all that apply. Anyway, that was my overview of getting the Milsurp Munitions 264 Vetterli safe cartridges, taking it to the range, and testing them out. So, with that being said, we'll see you guys later.